everyone, this is Mary here and Mary Reads. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I decided to talk about the books that were the most read, the most bought in the period between 1990 and 1999. That was the decade before I was born, so I decided that this is going to be an interesting way to look at how people lived right before I was born and what they read, what my parents maybe read when they were young, what trends there were in book publishing. So I got 10 novels, each for every year. I had a bunch of sources available to me and I looked at various different places, but I decided to use one source in the end, and I will put the link down below so you can check it out if you want to. I feel like that was the most trustworthy source. So yeah, I decided to use that one. Though I think there were many more books that were popular in those years, I chose the first one from every list that I saw and kind of formed a more or less coherent list of the books. And let's start with 1990. The most bought, the most read book in 1990 was The Plains of Passage by Jean Auel. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. It was the first time I've heard about this book. I've never seen it anywhere before. So it was very interesting to me that the most bought, the most read book is not anywhere in the lists anymore. So if about other books I've heard about, if about the other authors I've heard about, this book was completely new to me. I've never heard anything about it. So this is a historical fiction novel about two people who are going along the Great Mother River, and they are going from the territory that is modern Ukraine to the territory that is modern France. I have no idea what can happen to them, who these two people are to one another. It's a man and a woman, so I don't know if they are maybe lovers of their husband and wife, or their brother and sister, or who are they, or are they just strangers? And I don't know what exactly happens to them, but Ukraine is fairly far from France, so I have a feeling that a lot will happen to them, because walking the whole distance is going to entail a lot of different adventures and a lot of difficulties and a lot of disasters that could happen. I don't think this is the book I would actually read right now. I don't know, it just doesn't sound super gripping, even though I do like historical fiction. But if you've read this book before, let me know if it's good, if it's worth reading, and if I should try it next year. Now let's move to 1991, and 1991 greets us with Scarlet by Alexandra Ripley, and this is the sequel to the Gone with the Wind novel by Margaret Mitchell, and this is, I feel like this would be a fan fiction type of literature. So the author is thinking and imagining what could have happened right after the novel, Margaret Mitchell's novel, ends. So we start exactly where the first original novel ends, and the author tells us a story of Scarlet. She now lives alone, not with Red Butler anymore. She realizes she lost her daughter, she lost her friend, they both died, and she realizes when she's already alone, when she's already lost so much, she realizes that she still loves Red Butler and that she wants to be with him. So she has to gain back his love and his trust to be with him again. I'm still trying to read Gone with the Wind. I can't find the edition that I like. I found this one that looks very much like a textbook, so I really don't like reading on paper like that and with font like that. Well, mostly the size. So I'm looking for the edition that I'm going to like. I'll see what my local library has, so maybe I'll get it there. But so far I haven't read the first one, so I don't think it would make any sense to read the sequel. So yeah, I think mostly it would be for those people who loved the universe. So if you've loved the novel, if you've loved the universe and the atmosphere and the characters, then maybe if you haven't read this novel yet, but you've already watched the movie and you've already read the book and you don't know what else you can do, this is something you can look into to get back into that atmosphere, to dive into the story again. Now, 1992, and we finally get Stephen King on the list. I was surprised he wasn't there before. And the book that he published that year and that got a best-selling novel is Dolores Claiborne. And this is the novel about a 65-year-old woman who is suspected in killing her employer, this very, very rich lady. And the novel is told as her statement that she gives to the police. So since the whole book is based on a statement, is kind of a retelling of a statement, is a statement, I have a feeling that she is guilty, but there is much more to the story. Maybe there was something wrong with the woman, that she is supposedly murdered. So I'm very interested in reading that particular novel, especially because it feels like a very unlikely murderer, a 65-year-old woman who has already lived, who worked, who was never accused of anything. So I think that this is going to be a very, very interesting novel. I don't think it's going to be horror. I think it's going to be more of a thriller, but I'm very excited nonetheless about this novel. Now, in 1993, the most sold out, the most read novel was The Bridges of Madison County. And this novel was actually published in 1992. So I have a feeling that it got some speed, it got some reviews, and people started buying it more a year after. So it slowly gained traction. But this is the story I'm actually interested in because I remember when I was little, my mom was telling me about a movie and we even had a DVD of that movie. So I'm very interested in reading a book. For a very long time, I didn't know that there was a book. And now when I was doing research for this video and I saw that it was actually one of the most read books, I decided that maybe this is something that I should read. So this is a story about a woman, Francesca. She's Italian. She is a war bride. She has a family. And as I understand, she lives on a farm. And one day she meets a photographer who she has an affair with. This very passionate, very emotional love story happens between them in only 4 days. But Francesca ends up choosing her family and her husband. And I think we're going to be reading about this feeling that she loves another man, but she has responsibilities and she's not very young anymore. She's middle-aged. So it feels like she is going into nowhere. She would be going into nowhere if she decided to stay with this photographer and build a life with him. So I'm very, very interested in this scenario, especially because she already is middle-aged. So she has some routine established. She has kids. She has a husband. She has a lot to leave behind. So I think this brings a very, very spicy note to the story. And I'm very curious about how it's going to end and what exactly are going to be the main character's feelings. Now, starting from 1994 and until 1999, this wave of John Grisham happens. I don't know exactly what's going on there and why he was such a popular author for 6 years in a row. His books were bestsellers and #1 bestsellers for 6 years in a row. What do you have to write to have such big fan base to the point where people buy your books every single year for 6 years in a row? And I have a feeling it could go into 2000s, early 2000s. I need to check on that. But basically, John Grisham writes thrillers, and they're very much connected to lawyers. Lawyers are main characters in most of the cases, or if not a lawyer, then a law firm or some sort of a court case that's going on. So I wonder if John Grisham actually studied law in school. That's something that I would like to check. That's interesting. But let's move on to the novels. In 1994, the most read novel was The Chamber by John Grisham, and this novel tells a story of a young 26-year-old lawyer who is just beginning his career and who is brilliant. So he has a huge career right in front of him. And he takes the case of a death row killer. And this case just looks impossible. It feels like if you already got a death sentence, what else is there to talk about? What else is there to investigate? How is it even possible to provide support and be a lawyer of a person like that? So I'm very interested in how it could go. I think this is not my favorite genre. So if I'm looking into thrillers, I would mostly be interested in something more maybe mysterious, or at least I would be interested in a story that's told from the point of view of a detective or police, something like that, but not a lawyer. But I think this could be interesting, actually. As a new genre, I've never read anything by John Grisham. As a new genre, I think John Grisham would be a great way to start, just because he has such a great variety of novels in this genre, and because he was proven to be good by a lot of people reading and buying his books. In 1995, John Grisham published The Rainmaker, and this book became the most sold out, the most read book of the year. And this book I would actually be interested in reading. So it's a courtroom thriller. One more time, as I mentioned before, this is basically what he writes about. I don't know if he has anything written about other topics, but it seems that this is his kind of road which he walks when he writes books, so courtroom thrillers. But basically this is a story about a young law graduate who exposes a super complex multi-billion-dollar insurance scam that was done by one of the most ruthless, the most corrupted, and the most powerful companies in America. And I have a feeling that he's gonna try to figure out how to deal with this case and how to sue that company, which is gonna be super hard since they are the largest company. They can pay the best lawyers, you know, and they're corrupt. Who knows what sort of connections they have. So this is actually the novel I would be interested in reading. So if you've read this novel, please let me know if that's something that I should read as an introduction to the courtroom thrillers, or maybe if there is another novel that I should start with and it would be better. 1996, John Grisham publishes the novel The Runaway Jury, and this is a story that's set in, I think, 1960s, and it tells a story of a widow. She just became a widow, of a 53-year-old man who was a lifelong smoker, and she decides to sue the tobacco company for her husband's early death. And all the tobacco companies get together against this woman just because they realize that if this woman wins a case against one company, then other people can sue other tobacco companies, and then they're all going to be in a super bad situation, let's put it that way. So they all get together and organize against her, and I wonder how it's going to end, if she alone is going to be able to stand against these huge corporations. The 1997 novel by John Grisham is called The Partner, and it follows a young man who fakes his own death and steals millions of dollars from the company he worked at. Many years later, the truth gets uncovered, and now our main character has to answer for those things that he did, because obviously he's responsible for that crime, and he has to face the consequences of that crime. In 1999, the most read and the most bought novel was The Street Lawyer by John Grisham, and this is the story about a man who is a lawyer, and he has an encounter with a homeless person. And this encounter was life-changing for our main character, and he decides to be on the side of this homeless person in the homeless person's case against the huge law firm. And this is also a very interesting scenario because we get a lawyer who obviously is loyal to the law firm. We have a lawyer who thought that he's protecting the law and he works for the law. But now we have this homeless person who doesn't have any sort of reputation or any sort of anything. And he is going against that law firm. So the main character has to kind of choose here what's more important for me, my career and what I believe a lawyer does and what law does, and this person's values and this person's problems. I think the whole conflict here is going to be that our main character will understand that law is actually not as, one-dimensional as he thought it was, that there are actually a lot of different ways to look at it, and it's not perfect and it's not always fair, and this homeless person will prove it to him, and that's why he decides to take this case. I don't know, maybe I'm fully off, maybe I'm completely misunderstanding what this novel is about, but it feels kind of like an interesting conflict, and that might be something I would be interested in reading as well. It looks like I'm gonna have a whole reading John Grisham month at some point next year. And finally, in 1999, John Grisham publishes The Testament, and this is a novel about a very rich and very old man who rewrites his will just hours before his death. And he wants to write a message or make a call to his family, his children, his ex-wives, his friends, his employees. And he wants to tell them something that's going to start a huge legal battle after his death, and that's going to change lives of many, many people. I was actually a little bit surprised and suspicious about this list of books because I didn't see Harry Potter there. I thought that maybe it's because I think the first Harry Potter book first came in the US in 1998, and it was positioned as a book for kids, so maybe it wasn't as widely bought as I thought it would be. So maybe that's the reason. Please let me know if maybe I'm forgetting something, or maybe I didn't know about something and you know about other books that were super popular in 1990s and you remember that everybody was talking about them, everybody was reading them, you were reading them. So let me know in the comments if that's the case and if you know of any books like that. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.